Hello and welcome to your Newsmax Daily for Friday, March 8th, 2024. It is the second of 5 Fridays this month, International Women's Day, commemorating the achievements in gender equality. And you know, spring is right around the corner with daylight saving time rolling around. That is Sunday. Clocks go ahead or spring ahead 1 hour. So come Monday, it'll feel like we had a shorter weekend, unfortunately. But today, it's going to be all about what was supposed to be the State of the Union address.
Many of you in this chamber and my predecessor are promising to pass a national ban on reproductive freedom. My God, what freedom else would you take away?
It's funny, and I don't mean ha-ha funny, that he would use God in the same sentence with abortion. President Biden making it clear last night in his State of the Union turned campaign speech that Democrats are going to use abortion as their platform for the election. Because what else can they use? He criticized former President Trump on multiple occasions, referring to him only as his predecessor, as he did there 13 times without mentioning Trump by name. He spoke for 67 minutes, less than the 69 and a half that we discussed yesterday, the over-under in Vegas. And I told you yesterday I was taking the under. Maybe you won some money as well. As anticipated, he also didn't say much about the biggest issue in the country, other than urging Republicans to sign his border bill.
Folks, I would respectfully suggest my Republican friends owe it to the American people, get this bill done. We need to act now.
Now, I don't have to remind you that he ended the Remain in Mexico policy, let Title 42 expire, immediately stopped construction of the border wall, had like 90 some odd executive orders, strengthened DACA rules, suspended asylum deals with Honduras, Guatemala, El Salvador, extended deportation protections for Liberians, and the list goes on and on. And after being challenged by Georgia Rep. Marjorie Taylor Greene, who was wearing a shirt that said, "Say her name," President Biden finally said her name, although incorrectly.
Lincoln Riley, an innocent young woman who was killed by an illegal. That's right. But how many of the thousands of people being killed by illegals? To her parents, I say, my heart goes out to you, having lost children myself. I understand.
Calling Lincoln Riley.
President Biden's border policies are a disgrace. This crisis is despicable. And the truth is, it is almost entirely preventable.
That's Senator Katie Britt of Alabama, who delivered the Republican response to the State of the Union. That wasn't much of a State of the Union, from her kitchen table in Montgomery, Alabama.
My husband, Wesley, and I just watched President Biden's State of the Union address from our living room. And what we saw was the performance of a permanent politician who has actually been in office for longer than I've been alive.
This is Newsmax senior White House correspondent James Rosen.
Sean, good evening to you. The president spoke, by my unofficial count, for about 67 minutes. The speech amounted to a Frankenstein composite of various stock speeches that he gives. Perhaps the most newsworthy element was the announcement, previewed earlier in the day, that he will order the U.S. military on an emergency basis to build a seaport off the coast of Gaza for humanitarian aid there. In terms of assuaging voters about the age concern, there were some garbled words at times. The president was energized, as his aides said that he would be. There were two misstatements, one when he misspoke about the name of Laken Riley, calling her Lincoln Riley. At one point, referring to his own American Rescue Plan, he said every American voted against it, when he meant every Republican. He again called on Speaker Johnson to bring to the House floor those Senate measures on the border and Ukraine. This is a baffling use of presidential capital, because the Speaker has now for months indicated that those measures have no future on the House floor. In short, it is unclear what this compilation of Mr. Biden's stock speeches will do to persuade swing voters. Perhaps it's equally unclear that there are any persuadable voters left, which is to say, any voters who haven't made up their minds on Joe Biden and Donald Trump.
Newsmax senior White House correspondent James Rosen at the Capitol last night, and back in studio, this is former Pennsylvania Senator Rick Santorum.
It was a laundry list. I think James pointed this out. It was a laundry list, full woke socialist. I got your back trans people. I've got, high on right up front was abortion. They hit all the cultural things that were really important to his base. It was very much a base speech. I've been to 16 State of the Unions. Joe's been to more than I have. I have never seen a speech that partisan. I have never seen a speech that political. And I have never seen a speech where he didn't have applause lines for everybody. I mean, yes. a president goes in there, and yeah, you can give a tough speech, and I've been in front of some tough speeches, but every president goes in there with the idea that remember, Joe Biden was supposed to be the unity president. Right. He was supposed to bring us back together. He was supposed to be bringing back to normalcy. This was anything but the norm for a State of the Union. And I saw two times, correct me if I'm wrong, I only saw two times where Republicans stood. One was to applaud John Lewis, and the other was to talk about the hostages getting back. That was it. There was no attempt at all to bring in the other side. In fact, he taunted the other side. Yes. He went out. He actually tried to get them to engage him to show how tough he was. So this was the most political speech, I would argue, in the history of the State of the Union.
Former presidential candidate Senator Rick Santorum on Newsmax. And that really sums it up if by some chance you didn't see it or you didn't watch the whole thing, which I can understand. It was argumentative. It was divisive. It was a campaign speech. It may have made some Americans, some Democrats feel better about Joe Biden, but I don't know that it made many Americans feel better about America, which is what the State of the Union is supposed to do. There was not a lot of substance on any of the issues. Kind of, went down the line and checked off the boxes, but didn't get deep into anything. The AP and others calling it a fiery speech, I guess you could say that. Former President Donald Trump on his Truth Social called it angry and polarizing. Donald Trump's senior advisor, Jason Miller, spoke about it on Wake Up America this morning.
What was the general reaction at Mar-a-Lago last night after the speech?
Well, following up what President Trump had to say, when we saw Joe Biden, it was an unhinged madman who has an alternate view of reality. And in fact, it was quite remarkable to me that the mainstream media seemed to give Joe Biden some sort of participation trophy simply because he could stay up that late. Kind of reminds me of the old adage that you get 200 points on your SAT if you simply spell your name correctly. There was, of course, the Laken-Riley flub, which was just completely disrespectful. But I think what's going to stand out the most from last night's State of the Union from Joe Biden was what wasn't in there. There was nothing that reached across party lines, think criminal justice reform that President Trump did. There's nothing that said we can do more as Americans or even humans, something that's inspirational, such as Space Force, which President Trump also did. But the single biggest thing is that there was no emotional connection or acknowledgement of the pain and suffering that Americans around the country have because of Bidenflation or the Biden migrant crisis, and the fact that 3/4 of the country think we're going in the wrong direction.
Yeah, it's the State of the Union, but the start of the speech sounded a lot like the State of Ukraine's union. He began the speech talking about Ukraine. Then he mentioned comments that Trump made about Vladimir Putin. Take a listen.
Wasn't long ago when a Republican president named Ronald Reagan thundered, "Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall." Now, my predecessor, a former Republican president, tells Putin, quote, "Do whatever the hell you want." That's a quote. A former president actually said that, bowing down to a Russian leader. I think
Jason, that comment getting a lot of attention last night. Can you put that into context for us? Because obviously when it comes to a comment like that, context is really important.
Yeah, context really is important. And what Joe is clearly forgetting, which we know that Joe has a problem remembering certain things, is that President Reagan also said you need to have peace through strength, that you need to have deterrence. And when you think back to the Obama-Biden administration, they lost Crimea. Ukraine did. to the Russians. Also, Russia invaded Ukraine now under Joe Biden. But what President Trump was able to do, and the comments that Joe Biden were taking completely out of context, was the fact that President Trump got our NATO allies to start paying more of their bills. There were only, I believe, 3 countries that were reaching the 2% of GDP spending on military when President Trump started, finished up with about 9 or 10. And that number only started to go up of the 31 countries in NATO because of President Trump's pressure. And what the president was able to do was get all these countries moving, because he said if Article 5 is to be there and to be completely respected and upheld, which means it will defend all of our allies,
right,
Article 3, the funding article, has to be respected as well. And so President Trump got it so we're not footing the world's bills anymore.
That's Trump senior advisor Jason Miller, up early this morning on Wake Up America with Rob Finnerty. There is news today that the former president will be meeting with Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban at his Mar-a-Lago home. The two men, similar in style and personality, formed a friendship during Trump's presidency. Orban even spoke at CPAC. President Biden used the Uvalde school shooting in his speech last night to again call for an assault weapons ban. Yesterday, at a Uvalde City Council meeting, the independent investigator investigating the police response cleared all local officers of any wrongdoing. Another slap in the face for the victims' families, and they are irate in Uvalde, Texas. The independent investigator saying the officers at the scene acted in good faith despite multiple reports from multiple agencies previously saying that police totally botched the response to the massacre. Remember, they stood outside for 77 minutes, and they waited after they got the call that there were still kids alive inside the school. Not 7 minutes, not 17 minutes, not 27 minutes like in Parkland, 77 minutes. It is really, really sad. Today, President Biden and the First Lady are back in Philadelphia to discuss all the recent shootings and the rise of crime in Philadelphia. No, come on. They're there for another campaign event, and then they'll be heading straight to Delaware for the weekend. Today is the day the Labor Department released its big closely watched jobs report, by the way. I mentioned it earlier in the week that we would have Fed Chairman Jerome Powell speaking and then the big non-farm payroll report. So Powell didn't destroy the market yesterday, and the non-farm payroll report this morning showed 275,000 jobs for the month of February. That was 75,000 more than what analysts had expected. So the markets are in the green, at least as of now. Do take note, though, in the small print, both January and December's better than expected numbers were both revised lower, meaning they haven't really been as good as the numbers that they are initially giving us. The unemployment rate rose to 3.9%, and average hourly earnings, this is the really important part of the report, watched closely as an inflation indicator, rose less than expected, up just 0.1%. 0.4% was what the expectation is. Again, that's average hourly earnings. And I mentioned at the open, today is International Women's Day, very important day. Tomorrow, Saturday, also important. It is the very first ever National Hostage and Wrongful Detainee Day, created to raise awareness of U.S. hostages that are being wrongly detained all over the world, like the ones that are currently detained in Gaza. March 9th, by the way, tomorrow's date, is the birthday of former FBI agent and CIA contractor Robert Levinson. He was the longest held hostage in U.S. history who died while being held captive in Iran. And a new flag has also been created in concert with the day. It'll fly above the White House, the State Department, and the Capitol building tomorrow. Keep up with all of the news today and throughout the weekend on Newsmax, Newsmax Plus, and at Newsmax.com. Don't forget, Wake Up America Weekend Edition begins at 7 o'clock Eastern, Saturday and Sunday. Saturday and Sunday Report, Saturday Agenda, America Right Now, Donald Trump's rally in Georgia tomorrow. That'll be on Newsmax tomorrow afternoon. And if you don't have Newsmax Plus, go to NewsmaxPlus.com as soon as you're done listening and get signed up. You can also get a free trial. I'm Tony Marino. Thank you, as always, for listening to the Newsmax Daily. Continue to share it with your friends and family. If you missed any episodes, the weekend would be a good time to catch up on those and check out some of the other great Newsmax podcasts as well. Enjoy your weekend, be safe, and keep on fighting the good fight.
News breaks every minute, every day. You need the app, the Newsmax app. Find it free on your smartphone store. Then watch us anytime, anywhere.
Greg Kelly over at Newsmax. The Newsmax people have been really terrific. Newsmax has been terrific.
President Trump is right. Millions are tired of Fox, and they're switching to Newsmax Plus. It's the fastest growing streaming service in America. You don't need woke Disney and Hulu anymore. Just get Newsmax Plus. Watch the best shows like Greg Kelly, Rob Schmidt, Greta Van Susteren, and Eric Bolling. And get incredible analysis from Dick Morris, Alan Dershowitz, Carrie Lake, Mike Huckabee, and more. It's free to start. So go to NewsmaxPlus.com now to sign up and watch Newsmax anytime, anywhere.